Some encounters do not require words. A glance, a fleeting shift in the air, and something invisible begins to move. The man does not have time to understand what is unfolding, yet he is already being drawn into the energetic field of the woman standing before him. It is a kind of force that cannot be imitated, cannot be rehearsed. It does not originate from appearance or eloquence, but from a far deeper plane, the frequency of the soul. Carl Jung called it the anima, the feminine presence that resides in the deepest strata of a man's unconscious. When a woman lives in harmony with her essential truth, unmasked, unperformed, when she stops chasing acceptance and no longer needs to be chosen to feel whole, she awakens the anima inside the man. And when that happens, he cannot explain what draws him to her. He only knows something deeply real has been stirred within him. This is not seduction. This is not a method. It is the unseen current emanating from a woman who has fully chosen herself and therefore no longer requires validation. If something deep inside you has ever been stirred by a woman's quiet presence, you're not alone. Watch to the end. And if it resonates, subscribe to walk this journey back to your truest self. Number 1, feminine energy does not arise from looks or from speech. It comes from a vibration, a frequency. There are moments no one else notices, no one else hears, yet they can shake the entirety of the inner world. A man may walk into a crowded room, passing faces, voices, and gestures all vying for attention. Then suddenly, he pauses. There is a woman, not loud, not showy, but something in her presence stops his steps. It's not because she's the most striking or the most articulate. It's because something nameless pulses from her, an invisible thread weaving through space and touching something hidden within him. This is a level of perception that does not live in the eyes or the ears. It resides in the soul itself, and the soul does not listen with ears or see with eyes. It senses through frequency. In Jung's view, human beings are not ruled by reason alone. We dwell in a broader reality, the world of the unconscious. There, ancient forces move silently, yet with undeniable power. They shape our emotions, perceptions, and even our most personal decisions. When Jung spoke of the anima, he was not merely describing a symbolic feminine image inside the male psyche. He was pointing to a kind of soul connection capable of awakening what has long been buried, the forgotten, untouched layers of the spirit. It is this kind of feminine energy, not from performance, but from real presence, that creates a resonance too deep to explain. We live in a world conditioned to judge by what it sees. People praise a woman's smile, her body, her clever speech. But what makes a man unable to forget a woman does not dwell there. It lies in what defies explanation. It's a sensation as though she entered his internal space long before they exchanged a single word. Jung believed some experiences live beyond the reach of ordinary consciousness. In Man and His Symbols, he wrote, "The psyche is not of today. Its ancestry goes back many millions of years. Individual consciousness," he said, "is merely a flower, a fleeting season, sprung from the deep, perennial realm hidden beneath the surface. This may explain why certain vibrations, though wordless, awaken something ancient in us, a memory that feels familiar, even if we've never met." Feminine energy is not about seeming gentle, sweet, or flawless. It is about being fully anchored in one's essence. The woman does not attempt to impress. She does not sculpt herself into a more acceptable version. She does not exaggerate or contort her being to be seen. And precisely because of that, her stillness, Her completeness emits a rare and unmistakable frequency, the frequency of truth. The man senses that truth even before a single word is spoken, because in a true encounter, what moves first is never thought, it is always energy. This is a kind of story many people have lived through, even if they've never been able to explain it. It's not imagination. It's real, deeply real. I don't know why I'm drawn to her. She barely speaks. She's not the most striking woman I've seen, and yet I can't look away. This isn't a line from a romantic movie. This is what the soul experiences when it comes into contact with the frequency it recognizes. Jung offered a simple yet profound explanation for this. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. So when a man meets a woman who awakens something within him, something he hasn't yet known or owned, he calls it destiny. But in truth, it is the emergence of a hidden part of his unconscious, part her presence has managed to touch. Many people still believe they must do something extraordinary to be loved, be more attractive, say the right things, make themselves worthy in someone else's eyes. But something changes when a woman starts letting go of all those tactics. When she stops performing and instead begins living from fullness. When she knows, with certainty, that she does not need to be chosen in order to feel valuable. That is when her energy becomes magnetic. Not because she is trying to be desirable, but because she no longer needs to be. Not because of what she says or does, but because she is completely, unapologetically herself. Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. And when a woman has awakened, when she looks inward and touches her own heart, she no longer needs to raise her voice to be noticed. Her energy becomes potent enough for others to feel it, even if she says nothing at all. That is when a man senses her as if she has entered him through some unseen threshold, the invisible door of the unconscious, the door that leads into the soul. If you've ever entered a room and suddenly felt the energy shift the moment someone walked in, then you've experienced this kind of frequency. It does not speak, but it is there. It does not demand, but it cannot be dismissed. Jung called it the aliveness of the soul. Not a soul covered in ego's armor, but one liberated from the need to control. The strange part is men feel this frequency before they have the words to describe it. And because they can't explain it, they remember it. They do not forget the woman. She might not be the most flawless, might not fit the world's standard of perfection, but she carries something deeply true, something vividly alive, utterly still, powerful in its quietness. A naturalness that softens their guard, that quiets judgment, and in her presence, they simply feel, I'm standing near something real, and I don't want to walk away from it. It's not her words, not her figure, not logic. It's the vibration of her soul. That frequency is what causes a man to fall in love. And the most beautiful part, you don't have to create that frequency. It's already inside you. You only have to stop chasing and start returning. When you begin to live in alignment with your truest self, the energy you give off will naturally draw in the one who's meant to find you. No tactics, no strategies, only honesty pure, grounded honesty with your own essence. Jung would never teach you how to seduce. He would teach you how to become yourself and let the rest be guided by the deepest frequency of all. Because soul recognizes soul long before the mind understands what is happening. Number 2, the woman a man falls in love with is not perfect. She is true. And it is from that truth one that arises not from effort, but from essence, that love begins to form something real. But this is not the kind of love shown in movies, where everything is perfectly timed, polished, and choreographed to impress. This is the kind of love that makes a man sit quietly and wonder, why can't I stop thinking about her, even though she didn't do anything at all? That's when we step into the core of real attraction, not driven by perfection, but anchored in truth. In the world we live in today, where images are photoshopped, where feelings are curated, where every word is calculated, truth becomes rare, and for that reason, it becomes precious. A woman who does not seek to impress, who doesn't cover her imperfections, who doesn't perform a version of herself that's easy to love, that is the woman who touches a man's soul at its deepest place. She does not enter to prove she is enough. She enters and simply exists, and that alone reshapes the entire atmosphere around her. Carl Jung saw this clearly. The man who can quietly contemplate his own soul, who dares to look into the depths of himself without flinching, is the only kind of man who can truly meet another in love. We cannot love with truth unless we first have the courage to live in truth. And the woman who lives in her truth, without pretense, without masks, becomes an invisible invitation, an unspoken doorway through which a man may step into a soul-to-soul encounter, a meeting where roles dissolve, where only presence remains. Have you ever encountered a woman like that? A woman whose silence speaks louder than 100 polished phrases? She doesn't say, "Look at me," and yet you cannot look away. Not because she's trying to be elusive, but because she simply refuses to hide. And when a woman stops hiding, she emits something unmistakable. An energy so distinct, it can only come from someone who lives anchored in her truth. It is the energy of inner trust, a stillness so grounded that it makes others feel safe, even when they don't know why. Jung called this individuation. The journey of becoming an authentic individual, where one sheds the masks and roles society has assigned, and finally steps into the fullness of their true self. A woman who has embarked on that path no longer tries to be perfect to be loved. She understands, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. That's from Jung's memories, dreams, reflections. She does not allow her wounds to define her, but neither does she bury them. It is her willingness to be honest fully and without defense that gives rise to a magnetism no one can quite explain. And maybe you're still watching this video, because deep down, some part of you is tired too. Tired of pretending to be fine. Tired of always needing to prove your worth. So pause. Ask yourself gently, if I didn't have to impress anyone else today, who would I be? What would surface if I stopped needing to be loved and simply allowed myself to exist? Imagine this scene, a party filled with beautiful, charming women. Laughter, conversation, polished gestures everywhere. But then there's one woman, not the most striking at first glance, yet slowly, all eyes keep returning to her. She says little, but the way she stands, the way she smiles, with softness, the way she doesn't rush to be noticed, it changes the entire rhythm of the room. That's not chance. That's not luck. That's energy, real and undeniable. She isn't trying to call attention. She simply emits presence. Carl Jung once said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." That's from Psychological Aspects of the Personality. This woman does not become magnetic by editing out her flaws. She becomes magnetic by embracing her entire truth, the pain, the joy, the anger, and even the silent longings she once buried. And when she walks into a space, men don't just think she's beautiful. They feel something stir within them, a pull that makes them want to stay near. Perhaps that's why men remember the women who are real, even long after those women are gone from their lives. They don't just leave behind memories. They leave tremors in the soul. A man may forget what you said. He may forget the dress you wore. But he will never forget the feeling of sitting beside you if you were truly present in yourself. This is not something you learn through a script or strategy. This is something you become the moment you stop resisting who you are. And if you are still walking that path, remember, your truth does not make you fragile. It makes you irreplaceable. What stirs in you when you hear this? Leave a comment below. Are you living in your truth, or are you still wearing a mask to feel loved? We live in a culture that teaches us to earn attention, to do something, to say something, just to be chosen. But Jung pointed to something deeper, a quieter truth. We cannot change anything unless we accept it. That's from modern man in search of a soul. You cannot create true magnetism until you accept yourself, even the parts that are messy, raw, unfinished. And once you do, you don't have to do anything anymore. You just have to be there, fully. That is when a man truly feels you, not as someone waiting to be picked, but as someone who has already chosen herself, and that is irresistible. Number 3. Jung and the concept of the anima. Why men fall in love without knowing why. When a woman enters a room, and without saying a word, draws every gaze toward her, it's not because she's the center of attention, it's because she is centered in herself. Earlier, we explored the power of a woman who lives in her truth, one who doesn't perform, doesn't flatter, who is simply, fully present. But what happens inside a man when he encounters such a woman? Why is it her, not anyone else, who stirs his soul in a way he can't explain? To understand that, we have to go deeper into the heart of Carl Gustav Jung's work, and the concept he called the anima. Jung was more than a psychoanalyst. He was a cartographer of the human spirit. In his analytical psychology, the anima is one of the core archetypes. It symbolizes the feminine dimension hidden within the male unconscious. Jung wrote in Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, the anima is the archetype of life itself. She is not simply the imagined ideal woman a man fantasizes about. She is the living symbol of emotion, of intuition, of spiritual connection, all qualities that many modern men unconsciously repress as they navigate a world of logic and productivity. That's why, when a man meets a woman who lives in her authentic energy, not needy, not manipulative, not performing, she becomes more than just a person. She becomes a mirror that reflects the anima within him. He does not fall for her because she's ideal. He falls for her because she awakens a part of his soul he's never dared to meet. She brings back the forgotten feminine softness, emotion, the love of beauty that exists beyond words. Jung wrote, "Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman." The real question becomes, when will he meet the one who brings that image to life? You may have heard a man say, "I don't know why I love her so much," or, "There's something about her I just can't explain. It keeps pulling me toward her." This is not fantasy. This is anima projection. It happens when the anima within a man is projected outward and fastens itself to a particular woman. But here's the turning point. If that woman is grounded in truth, if she's not trying to control, manipulate, or possess, she does not feed his illusion. She invites his awakening. The fact that every man carries within him a minority of feminine qualities becomes essential when those qualities are repressed, sensitivity, vulnerability, emotional connection. When a man denies these aspects within himself, he unconsciously begins to seek them in others. And when he meets a woman who lives from the grounded center of her being, authentic, unforced, present, he feels something in her that stirs a forgotten familiarity, something ancient, something long lost within himself. That's why the deepest connections are never built on appearance or circumstance. They are born from that sensation, I've known her, long before we ever met. Does this echo something in your own story? Have you ever felt pulled towards someone in a way you couldn't logically explain? Not because of what she did, but because her very presence felt like coming home to yourself. And here's the paradox. It's precisely when a woman is no longer searching to be loved that she awakens the deepest, most instinctive form of love within a man. When she stops trying to be sweet, stops trying to match the ideal in his mind, she opens a sacred space where his real self is allowed to surface. Jung wrote, "The anima always contains aspects of the unconscious that can be projected onto a person of the opposite sex. But if a woman lives only as a reflection of what a man wants, a shadow version of herself, crafted for approval, she only deepens the illusion. But when she lives from her essence, without shrinking or editing herself, she becomes an invitation, a doorway for his soul to rise." This is why men unknowingly fall for women who have integrated their inner world. These women don't chase love. They're not afraid of rejection. They don't mold themselves to match anyone's vision, because they're more than someone to love. They are living symbols of something sacred within the man himself, a part of his own soul that longs to be reclaimed. And the emotion he feels, it doesn't originate in the mind. It comes from somewhere far deeper, from the collective unconscious, where archetypes live and move and wait to be awakened. Carl Jung believed that true transformation happens only when we reclaim the parts of ourselves we once rejected. Individuation, he said, means becoming an individual, and true individuality embraces our innermost, irreplaceable uniqueness. So when a man meets a woman who helps him face his anima, not to remain in fantasy, but to return to his own truth, then love is no longer a passing emotion. It becomes a threshold, a path into his own soul. If you are a woman listening now, ask yourself, where is my love rooted? Is it born from fear, from a fear of being left behind, or does it emerge from a place of inner fullness? Are you unconsciously shaping a false softness, or surrendering to your original unfiltered energy? And if you are a man, ask yourself this: do I love her because she's flawless, or because she reflects a part of me I've never dared to look at? Share your thoughts below this video. Not ideas, not theory, but your lived truth. Have you ever loved like that loved someone without being able to explain why? Only knowing that something about her made it impossible to walk away. Number 4. The difference between a woman who is hungry for love and a woman who is love. Not every connection becomes love. There are moments that feel profound, as if two souls have known each other for lifetimes, but then it fades. Not because the emotion wasn't real, but because something invisible pushed the man away before he understood why. What happened? It's not that he didn't feel something deep. It's that he felt a void he could not fill. And that right there is the crucial divergence between two types of feminine energy. The woman who enters with hunger, and the woman who enters as wholeness, as love itself. One makes him feel responsible. The other makes him feel free. You can sense the difference, not from words, but from energy. A woman may be beautiful, intelligent, magnetic. But if she walks into love with a hollow center, hoping to be completed, she silently emits the signal, "Please choose me. Please make me whole." And even if a man doesn't consciously detect it, he feels it. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their souls." That's from Psychology and Alchemy. A man will feel a pressure he cannot explain, a subtle responsibility to make up for a void that was never his to carry. But in contrast, when a woman is already love, she needs nothing from him. She walks into the room with quiet strength. She isn't trying to be seen because she already sees herself. And that is precisely what makes her irresistible. Not because she needs him, but because her presence reconnects him with what is whole within himself. That's when he doesn't come to rescue her. He comes because he wants to be near that frequency that brings him back to his own center. Can you see this pattern in your life? Can you remember a time when you were drawn to someone? Not because they needed you, but because being near them made you better, made you quieter, more honest. That isn't an accident. That is the vibrational resonance Jung spoke of when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." A woman who has become herself, who is no longer hungry for love, sends out a signal that the male soul instantly knows. You can see the difference everywhere. A woman craving affection will check her phone constantly, need frequent reassurance, worry when she doesn't feel noticed. She lives in a state of internal scarcity, and that scarcity makes her chase, even when she doesn't realize it. But the woman who is love, who is already full, steps into connection with no need to prove anything. She's not rushing. She doesn't demand certainty. She lets her energy make the choices. Her field attracts, or it gently releases, but it never clings. And here's the truth that matters. Men don't run from strong women. They run from need, especially when it wears a perfect smile. Jung understood this at the deepest level. He said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you. It comes from being unable to share the things that matter most to you." That's from memories, dreams, reflections. A woman who is hungry for love isn't truly lonely because she's alone. She's lonely because she has not yet made a true connection with herself. Meanwhile, the woman who is love may stand alone, but she is never lonely. Never lonely, because the connection she once sought from others has already been made within herself. And that's what makes her energy impossible to replicate. To illustrate this, picture two women on the same date. One of them tries to create the perfect atmosphere. She asks all the right questions, laughs at the right moments, manages every detail with grace. But in her eyes, there's an invisible plea. Let me be good enough to be loved. The other says very little. She listens. She remains grounded. She doesn't rush, doesn't attempt to impress. Yet every moment she occupies is lived from her truth. No performance, no evasion, and the man feels it clearly. On one side, there is a need. On the other, there is wholeness. And almost always he will be drawn toward the wholeness, not because of logic, but because her energy allows him to stay present with himself. Ask yourself, are you loving from lack or are you loving from fullness? Is your love a form of proof you offer to feel worthy? Or is it a natural extension of your already complete being? Share what you feel in the comments. This is a moment of honesty, a moment to say while you may have never spoken aloud. When Jung spoke of individuation, the journey of becoming whole, he emphasized that it begins by moving from inner division toward inner unity. And in love, there is no stronger repellent than someone who is starving to be loved. Because just like in physics, lack repels, fullness attracts. A woman who lives in the energy of I am already enough sends no signal of need. She emits a silent invitation. If you are awake, you will recognize me. If not, I remain whole. Carl Jung did not teach us how to win love. He showed us how to become ourselves. And from that place, love is no longer hunger. It becomes a sacred act between two full souls. They do not choose each other to survive. They choose each other to expand the life within. Number 5, light and shadow, integrating the shadow to become whole. And then, when a woman no longer enters love to be filled, but enters already complete, she no longer attracts men through a subtle sense of lack that longs to be rescued. She draws them in through a powerful, unspoken field that makes them want to be near her so they too can feel more whole. But there is a deeper level still. Something that not only pulls a man in, but makes him trust her, respect her, remember her forever. That happens when she does not live only in her light, but dares to enter her own darkness. This is the journey Jung called the integration of the shadow. And perhaps nothing in his philosophy is more essential to becoming real than this. The shadow is the part of us that contains everything we have rejected, suppressed, or feared, the messy emotions, the forbidden thoughts, the anger, jealousy, insecurity, and secret desires. In Psychology and Religion, Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You cannot reach the light by merely visualizing the positive. You must walk into the dark and bring the light with you." For women, the shadow is often denied, even more forcefully. From childhood, girls are taught to be gentle, obedient, pleasant, always composed. A woman's anger is labeled difficult. Her desires called too much. She is rewarded for being sweet, praised when cheerful, while her sadness, her rage, her exhaustion are quietly buried in the unconscious. But what happens when a woman keeps cutting off parts of herself to fit the mold of a good girl? She may become easy to love, but she will never be truly seen. On the other hand, when a woman starts to do what the world told her not to, faces her anger, acknowledges her grief, dares to want, dares to fall apart, dares to not have it all figured out, something powerful begins to rise. Her energy becomes unmistakably alive. She no longer strives to be perfect. She becomes whole, and that is what moves a man. Not because she is always positive, but because around her, he too feels safe to be fully human. Sometimes angry, sometimes lost, sometimes vulnerable. A woman who has embraced her shadow is a woman who can hold space for his. Have you ever felt drawn to someone? Not because they were pleasant, but because they were raw and real, because they didn't hide, because every emotion they shared had weight, had depth, and touched something unfiltered in you. Share your story. It is through honesty that we grow this community with depth. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And it's true. Only when a woman dares to love herself in her anger, in her sorrow, in her fragility does her energy carry true fullness. Besonum, homaomum, benangt. She doesn't need a script. She doesn't need to conceal the broken edges. She stands with her light and with her shadow, and she invites the world into something deeper than comfort. She invites the world into truth. And that kind of presence does not merely attract a man. It makes him feel safe, accepted, real. Take a simple example. Some women are always pleasant, always polished, always smiling. But after a few dates, the man feels something is missing. As though she's acting a role, the role she thinks he wants. Then there is another woman. She admits when she feels insecure. She speaks openly of pain. She doesn't hide her tears. And she's the one who leaves a mark. He never forgets. Not because she needed saving, but because she had already saved herself by refusing to abandon any part of who she truly is. When a woman commits to integrating her shadow, she becomes whole. Jung called this individuation the process of bringing back all the fragmented pieces of the self into unity. In The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, he wrote, "Individuation means becoming an individual. And insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming oneself. It does not mean becoming the perfect version that others expect. It means becoming the one and only you that you were always meant to be. And that is what creates a magnetism that cannot be copied. A woman who has embraced her shadow no longer seeks validation. She is not afraid of being misunderstood. She does not think she needs to be easy to love to deserve love. She allows every part of her to exist. And that authenticity, that rare wholeness, is what stirs the souls of men who are awake enough to feel it. If you are on the path of returning to yourself, do not fear the shadow. Do not fear the parts of you once called too messy, too much, or too ugly, because only when you turn to face them do they stop ruling you from the dark. You begin to live instead of perform. You begin to love instead of bargain, and love begins to find you, not because you are perfect, but because you are finally real. Number 6. No more chasing, no more needing to be chosen. Only vibration. Needing to be chosen fades away. She begins to vibrate instead. When a woman has embraced both her light and her shadow, she no longer seeks acceptance to feel worthy. She doesn't soften her anger just to seem lovable. She doesn't bury her sadness to appear positive. She no longer hides her desire to fit an expected mold. The moment she stops adjusting herself to become some ideal, something profound starts to unfold. She stops chasing. She no longer asks to be chosen. Instead, she begins to radiate from the core of her being. This is the transformation Jung described as individuation. Now picture this. A woman enters a room, not with the intention to be seen, but with the quiet peace of someone who has already seen herself. No performance, no effort to stand out, no need to please. She doesn't ask, "Will you choose me?" She walks with the silent truth, "I have already chosen myself." And this is not arrogance. It's not coldness. It is the energy of integration, where all the fragmented parts of her have returned to a center that no longer depends on external validation. Jung described individuation as the path back to the true self, where the ego is no longer the center of the universe, but a bridge to the larger self. In The Relations Between the Ego and the Unconscious, he wrote, "Individuation means becoming a single, homogeneous being. And insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming oneself. A woman who has walked this journey no longer acts from lack. She does not love to be filled. She does not give in order to be loved. She loves herself first, and everything else is simply a reflection of that." Have you ever met a woman like that? a woman who doesn't chase love, but also doesn't avoid it. She is simply present, like a natural magnetic field. Denom. Don't. You don't feel manipulated. You don't feel judged, but you do feel challenged, because her wholeness won't allow half-hearted energy. This is what Jung meant when he said the self is our life's goal, for it is the completest expression of that fateful combination we call individuality. From memories, dreams, reflections, the individuated woman does not wait to be chosen. She chooses, but her choice isn't strategy, it's frequency. And something unexpected happens when a woman vibrates from that kind of center. Her energy begins to choose for her. She no longer has to manage who comes or goes. The field she emits does all the filtering. Those who are in resonance will remain. Those who are not ready will simply fade, like a radio signal that never quite tunes in. She doesn't manipulate. She doesn't lure. But she cannot be ignored. How do you feel when you hear this? Have you ever been in a space where you didn't need to try, and yet the right people, the right opportunities, found you? Or are you still, quietly, chasing something to fill an invisible gap? Share in the comments. Let your experience be seen, because this, too, is part of the return to your center, Jung said. What you resist not only persists, it grows. When a woman resists her own truth, when she suppresses her loneliness, her need, her longing, she repeats the cycle. She keeps chasing. But when she stops, when she allows herself to simply be, she no longer needs to be pursued. She only needs to be still and let her energy do the work. You can see this clearly. Even on a date, one woman stays active. She asks questions, keeps the conversation going, works hard to maintain attention. Not wrong, but exhausting. Another woman listens more than she speaks. She's present, without fear of where the moment may go. She's not trying to score points. Her stillness stirs curiosity, not because she's following a tactic, but because she has a center. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And the woman who has walked through her shadow faced her wounds, healed herself, and now loves herself unconditionally is the woman who has become. She does not choose from fear. She does not love from emptiness. She simply vibrates from wholeness. And when a man enters her space, he doesn't feel pressured, but he does feel pulled. Not because she demands anything, but because her frequency sets a standard. And unless he rises, he will sense he does not belong. That is the true nature of inner attraction. Have you ever experienced a moment where you didn't have to try, but were seen? In exactly the way you hope to be seen? Have you ever loved from your center? Or are you still running? Searching for validation in all the wrong places? Write it down. Because sometimes you don't need the answer right away. You just need the courage to ask the right question. And then, when all your strategies have grown quiet, when every performance has lost its charm, what remains is not a technique, not a secret, but the simple truth. You are living. Men do not fall in love because you are logical. They fall in love because something within them is stirred when they are near you. A frequency that cannot be seen, but cannot be denied. A vibration that cannot be analyzed, but cannot be forgotten. A woman does not need persuasion when she becomes fully herself. She does not need to explain. She does not need to try harder. Her presence is the answer. True love does not emerge from strategy. It is born from the resonance of two souls, each becoming a more honest version of who they already are. So stop asking how to be chosen. Start choosing yourself. Stop chasing love, as if it were some prize dangling out of reach. Live, vibrate, and walk into the world as though you already are love. Because in that state, you no longer need to pursue anyone. The one who is called by your energy will recognize you, even before they understand why. And that is the invitation, with no words, the one his soul cannot refuse. If something in your heart stirred as you heard this, if something within you quietly whispered, yes, don't ignore it. Subscribe to the channel to keep walking this path, the path of self-discovery, healing, and feminine awakening, through the deep, luminous lens of Carl Jung. Each video is a step closer to the truth of who you already are. Follow now, because your soul deserves to be nourished by truth, not by performance,